If you had any doubt about the depravity of the Trump administration, consider this. The Quakers have had to go to federal court to prevent DHS from raiding houses of worship this weekend. Welcome back to Democracy Docket. I'm Marc Elias.
And I'm Paige Moskowitz. Let's get started.
Paige, I have to say that I am rarely shocked by anything that Donald Trump is capable of. I understand that he's an election denier. I understand his appointments are election deniers. I understand that, some of his nominees don't believe in vaccines, even though they're going to oversee vaccines. They have, sucked up to Vladimir Putin, even though they're going to be, potentially in charge of the nation's intelligence. But Paige, this one seems too far, even for Republicans.
Marc, I agree wholeheartedly. Now, for decades, U.S. policy has been that immigration wouldn't enforce their actions at what was called sensitive locations or protected locations. These are places like schools, houses of worship, hospitals, shelters, things of that nature. The Trump administration has revoked that memo and said that DHS and ICE would be enforcing immigration laws at places like schools and houses of worship.
Yeah, Paige. And you know what's really unbelievable about this? During COVID, we were constantly being lectured by Republicans and their right-wing allies about how terrible it is and how unconstitutional it is for states and localities that were trying to control the spread of that deadly virus, putting in place restrictions on public gatherings. And one of the things they said is churches and synagogues and mosques, well, maybe they were mostly talking about churches, but places of worship have to be allowed to continue to meet in person because of religious freedom. And we are constantly lectured, Paige, also in the context of employers providing healthcare to women about the sensitive nature of religious rights and how religious institutions should not be burdened with having to provide basic healthcare to women. Well, here we are. And you have one of the oldest denominations in the United States saying, we are concerned that when we hold our religious meetings, ICE could break down the doors, and that would infringe on our constitutional rights to practice our religion. And, where is the right wing standing up for the Quakers today?
Right, Marc. One of the Quaker groups involved in this lawsuit, the Baltimore Yearly Meeting, said in a statement, the very threat of government officials wearing ICE emblazoned jackets outside of our religious service will have a significant impact on our communities and ability to practice our faith. We remain committed to our religious command and will use the tools available to defend our membership and faith.
Yeah, Paige. And the hypocrisy of this is just unending. I mean, here is a political party that has built itself around the notion of protecting religious liberty and of making sure that Christians in particular can practice their faith. As you know, Paige, there was a longstanding war on Christmas, apparently. But in any event, this is what the propaganda that they spew on Fox News and elsewhere. And yet, when it comes to immigration enforcement, as terrible as the Trump administration wants to be in a number of contexts, did they really have to start by targeting places of worship, schools, and hospitals? I mean, really? Really, there was no other place for them to start with executive orders than in their first round to target schools, places of worship, and hospitals?
Marc, and to your point, defending religious freedom and freedom of religion is a core American value, right? Like we have seen lawsuits come up again and again about how the government has infringed on religious freedom. Now, in this lawsuit, the Quaker groups and Democracy Forward are asking for emergency relief to block all ICE activities at all houses of worship across the country this weekend so that everyone could be able to go to their own house of worship this weekend and practice their faith freely without fear of interference from the government.
And, Paige, I think this brings up another really important issue that I want everyone to focus on, which is the role of lawyers in the courts. There was a lot of bowing down in advance of Donald Trump taking office. There has been a lot of bowing down to Donald Trump since he's been in office. But it has really been the lawyers and the legal organizations like Democracy Forward that have been at the forefront of pushing back. And they have had some successes. I mean, Democracy Forward itself is the same organization, Paige, that you and I talked about in the context of the anti-impoundment of funds, the OMB effort to freeze federal grants and loans. They and others also successfully challenged the birthright citizenship order. So I know that it is very popular on the left for people to bash the courts and bash the Supreme Court, but I think we also have to give due where it is earned. And so far, Donald Trump, for all of his alleged competence coming in this time, they have not looked that competent, and they have actually been losing case after case after case.
Right, Mark. In the case of the birthright citizenship order, we saw multiple lawsuits filed very quickly, both by Democratic state attorneys generals as well as private civil and immigrants' rights groups. That executive order was blocked very quickly. The OMB funding memo that you mentioned, that was blocked. It's now been rescinded. But, thanks to Caroline Leavitt, it's kind of unclear what the status is. So the courts are ready to get involved there to make sure that.
But then she tweeted. But back to this, it's going to be very interesting to see whether the Christian conservative organizations that are usually very litigious and are usually very organized to file amicus briefs and to otherwise get involved in cases. It'll be very interesting to see what they do here, whether they sit on the sidelines and act like they don't know that the case is going on, right? Which is like a classic Republican politician response, right? They're like, oh, did Donald Trump tweet something, right? Like, we'll see whether these interest groups, these conservative groups, take that approach. Whether they show an ounce of principle and actually stand with the Quakers, I wouldn't hold your breath for that. Or whether they find some way to say, oh, no, we as leaders of religious institutions, we want federal law enforcement to be kicking down our doors and searching our back rooms, our basements, and our attics. So we're going to have to wait and see there, Paige.
I also think it's really interesting how states are responding or have already gotten involved in this ICE and immigration enforcement business. Texas, for example, before the Trump administration came back into power, had passed a law requiring healthcare settings to ask for immigration status of patients. And you're like, why would that matter? They're there to receive healthcare. It's not an institution that would deal with immigration in that way. In Oklahoma, reportedly, the state has plans there to have schools ask their students about their immigration status. And again, citizenship status in those places shouldn't matter because it's not a government entity regulating and enforcing immigration laws.
Right. And this, though, goes even further than that. And nobody should, and this page goes much further than that. And everyone needs to be paying attention to this case specifically, because, we have talked over and over again how little spine there is to stand up against Donald Trump and the Republican Party. How Republican senators, Republican House members have turned over their constitutional rights and obligations to Donald Trump's whims, and how much of the conservative movement has compromised itself and turned itself into pretzels to accommodate Donald Trump. But Paige, this one, you just have to wonder if it's a bridge too far. Are Christian conservatives, are Republicans, are evangelicals going to say, we're fine with this? We're fine with an executive order that allows the violation of houses of worship on the weekends when houses of worship are having their various services, meetings, and celebrations. So everyone needs to pay attention to this. Make sure you're subscribed to Democracy Docket's free daily and weekly newsletters, where you'll be kept up to date on this and all of the pro-democracy news going on in America. We'll see you next time.